Okay, let's dive into a really chilling story out of Sacramento, California. It's a case that seriously exposes the darkness that can hide behind the most ordinary of faces.
Everything, and I mean everything, started to unravel with this one simple, desperate note. It was November 7th, 1988, and a former tenant of a local boarding house slipped this message to a police officer. Just one sentence that was about to blow the lid off a whole series of truly horrific crimes.
So that note pointed investigators to a boarding house at 1426 F Street. Now, on the surface, it seemed totally normal, run by the sweet, grandmotherly type. But as it turns out, her garden was holding a really gruesome secret. Things started moving fast. On November 11th, with Dorothea Puente's permission, believe it or not, a detective starts digging. And right as that first body is being unearthed, Puente just vanishes. By the 13th, there's a nationwide manhunt on for this seemingly sweet old landlady.
As the digging went on, the true scale of the horror became crystal clear. In the end, they found 7 bodies buried in her yard. This led to Dorothea Puente being formally charged with a staggering 9 counts of murder.
So who was this woman? Who was the so-called death house landlady at the very center of this house of horrors?
You know, the contrast between her two faces it's profound. Publicly, she was this respected community member, a charitable figure who looked after the needy. But behind closed doors, she was a cold, calculating predator who was exploiting those very same people for money.
This wasn't something that just happened overnight. To really get how this could even happen, you've got to look back at the life that shaped her.
Her life began in absolute chaos and tragedy. She was born Dorothea Gray back in 1929, and her childhood was just a nightmare of abuse and instability. Both of her parents were alcoholics, and after they both died, she ended up in an orphanage where the abuse just continued. It seems like this foundation of trauma just completely severed her ability to connect with people, replacing empathy with this predator's view of others as just things to be used.
And that early trauma? Well, it gave way to a whole lifetime of crime that shows this really clear pattern of escalation. I mean, from forgery and running a brothel, she moved on to targeting her tenants and then drugging people to rob them. This was way more than just murder. It was a long, long career in fraud and predation.
And this right here, this diagnosis, is a huge piece of the puzzle. We're talking decades before the bodies were ever found, doctors had already flagged her as a pathological liar with an unstable personality. This wasn't just some quirk. It was her main tool, her ability to expertly craft these false personas and manipulate literally everyone around her. That's exactly how she got away with it for so long.
Her method was this chillingly simple, repeatable cycle. It was like a playbook. She'd target the most vulnerable people in society, get control of their money, and then just eliminate them with drug overdoses. And that final step, forging letters, cashing checks, that's what let her keep the whole scheme going, sometimes for years.
So let's talk about how this all came crashing down around her. And it starts with one of the most brazen escapes you can possibly imagine.
Seriously, think about the audacity here. Her yard is being dug up, a body has just been found, and Puente, this small, elderly-looking woman, calmly asks a detective if she can pop over to a nearby hotel for a coffee. They actually let her go, and she just vanished.
The manhunt was intense. I mean, her face was plastered all over the news. And it ended just a few days later down in Los Angeles. A man she'd met at a bar who knew her under an alias saw her on a TV report and called the police. She was arrested without any incident at a motel.
So with Puente finally in custody, the legal system was facing this monumental task of getting some kind of justice for her many, many forgotten victims.
And the trial was massive. To build their case against her, the prosecutors called 156 different witnesses to the stand. They painted this incredibly detailed and horrifying picture of her years and years of deception and murder.
But here's the thing, despite this mountain of evidence, the jury's verdict was complicated. They found her guilty on 3 counts of murder, but they were deadlocked on the other 6. They just couldn't reach a unanimous decision.
Because the jury was also deadlocked on whether to give her the death penalty, Puente was ultimately spared execution. Instead, she got 2 life sentences, which pretty much ensured she would spend the rest of her days behind bars.
And that's exactly what happened. Dorothea Puente died in prison back in 2011. She was 82 years old, and she took her secrets and probably the full truth of her crimes with her to the grave.
You know, the story of Dorothea Puente is so much more than just a serial killer tale. It really forces us to ask a tough question. How can someone commit such evil for so long while seeming so completely harmless? It's just a haunting reminder of the predators who can hide behind a disarming smile and a quiet, everyday facade.